do look a bit of a mess. I just woke up. But this video, I thought I would share my revision process. So it's like partially revision vlog, but mostly it's like about the process and the steps I go through to revise a book. So I'm working on my NaNoWriMo novel, which is a YA contemporary fantasy horror. And I wrote that for NaNoWriMo. I have 95,000 words that I have not touched in any way. So I'm gonna go through that. So my revision process, I will say, kind of changes every time I do a revision, because I always end up kind of learning new ways that I want to revise that I didn't do before. So it really kind of shifts every time I do it. So this time what I'm doing is I'm starting off with a read through. I hate doing read throughs because I'm always so antsy to like get it done, but I really do need to read through everything, remember everything, see it with fresh eyes, and make notes about everything I want to do. So I do a read through. I'm gonna highlight phrases that I don't like, that I don't think I did very well, like metaphors that I think were kind of crappy and like things like that. I'm gonna highlight for me to know you have to redo this, you have to rewrite this. I'm also gonna make two types of notes. So I'm gonna separate my notes into general notes, which is just like overarching things like you need to fix this character arc, which I do need to do for most of them. So that's like a general comment, and then I'll have chapter by chapter comments. So things like this chapter needs to be shorter, or this chapter is kind of boring, can we spice it up? Or like this chapter names a character this, but in an early chapter they name them that. Things like that I'm gonna make note of on a chapter by chapter basis. And I'm gonna do that with, I'm telling myself, don't change anything at all. Like, this is not the time for me to be doing little tweaks and stuff. I should just straight be reading it through and making my notes, not allowed to touch it. In the past, I've let myself do all those little tweaks, and honestly, it just slows the process down. Like, I can do that later. I just need to go through it, read it, and make my notes, and that's it. So that's the first step of my revision process, is reading through, highlighting phrases that aren't working, making general and chapter by chapter notes, and not editing anything yet. So there it goes. Hello again. My hair is different now. I'm still working on the first part of my revision process. I'm still doing my read through. Weirdly, I found a chapter that I hadn't ever finished. And I think that was just like in my NaNoWriMo haze. I assumed I finished it, but then it turned out I hadn't actually. And that's why it's great to do these read throughs and just get a full lay of the land of what you've done, especially during NaNoWriMo when you can be so addled in your mind. Like, that's why I think it's really good to be doing this read through, and I'm glad that I've started to do that. Before, I just used to jump into revisions, and then like stuff like this would pop up and everything would get thrown off. And quite honestly, I never knew where I was going, so then it didn't matter. So right now, what I'm working on, the second step, is I'm revising all of my character arcs. So I set character arcs in the beginning, but a lot of them have changed, or as I wrote them, I didn't think they were as strong as I originally felt they were going to be. And that's why it's great to do these character arcs, because you want to revisit and you want to make sure your story is sticking to the arcs you set out. And you also want to examine if you find out that a character doesn't seem to have an arc. If a character is falling flat, then they may not have one, or they may have one that's not strong enough, and that's why it's great to revisit them. I'm going to put something here so that you can see how I've laid these out. I kind of follow, like, this is like a mix of like from online resources and also like a big chunk of what I know from Story Genius, which is a craft book. I'm going to link below so you can check it out if you want. And so really what these character arcs hinge on is the lie the character believes. And the lie the character believes as they're going towards their goal, it is what kind of drives their performance. Like, it's going to have a really big effect. And the fact that they believe this lie often stops them from achieving their goal, or kind of like really gets in the way, or it shows them that their goal is not actually what they want. What they want is to eventually achieve that truth or get to that truth, and that's a character resolution, assuming you have a positive character arc. If you have a negative character arc, then that's a whole other story. And I don't know that I want to get into that right now. But essentially what I do is I revise my character arcs. That's the most simplistic form of this second step of revision. So however you decide to revise your character arcs, you don't have to do it the way I do it. You can find other resources for that, but that's kind of the second step, is I want to revise those character arcs so that when I go to actually do my revisions, I have those in mind and I'm trying to make sure that I stick to those when I'm revising. I am still doing my I actually just finished my read through, but I'm taking advantage of the fact that I have makeup on because I'm going to a Christmas party to get into the final steps of this new revision process. So I'm still working on my arcs, but I know where everything is going next, so I'm going to go through those steps with you. So the next step I go through, step number 3, I believe, after I've got my character arcs and I've got my notes set up, is that from the beginning I've set up my notes into general notes and chapter by chapter notes. And so what I'll do next is I will go through the general notes and I'll kind of figure out where I'm gonna do that, kind of roughly, to give myself an idea of where the changes are gonna happen. And if there's actually specific chapters that I can slot those general notes into, then I'll go ahead and I'll do that first, just to kind of make things a bit easier. But other than that, there's really nothing for general notes than to continue to look at them as you continue to revise. And so now that you've done your read through and you've got your character arcs figured out, now it's the point of going through your actual work. So this is kind of just the part of revision. For me, I really just start at chapter 1 and I go through, I make all the changes in chapter 1 that I've noted for chapter 1 changes, and I'll check my general notes to make sure if there's anything that I need to do there. And then I'll also check my character arc to make sure that I'm sticking to what I said I was going to do. Usually what I'll do is I'll check my character arc right before I start writing, just so I kind of have that fresh in my mind before I go into it, and then I'll start making those changes. I always try and do the big changes in combo with the little nitty-gritty phrase changes, but honestly it's really hard to do those at once. So usually I will end up doing my big changes first, just kind of jumping around through the manuscript or going chronologically and making all the changes I need to make without necessarily reading through it. And then next, what I'll do after I finish all of that is then I'll actually go through the steps of making those specific notes. Hello again. Here I'm. Oh, are you gonna show yourself? No. I was gonna say the dogs are with me, but then they immediately ran away once I started talking about it. So whatever. One of them, you'll see over here. Miss, I want to eat snow, and now I'm cold from all the snow I've eaten, and I am shivering. Which is incredibly pitiful right now. To my nighttime chic. So I had filmed this section before, but then I was watching back the footage and I had this gigantic booger in my nose, and it was just I had just woken up to film and clearly I hadn't checked, and so that's why I'm here refilming this section, so you don't have to look at that. Anyway. So the next steps in my new revision process. So done the read through, done the character arcs, done making notes of general and specific things, chapter by chapter, things to change. And now the next step, the 4th step, is that I go through, of course, and make all those changes. Actually, I think I already said I go through and make all those changes. So once you've gone through and you've actually done all the revision bit, then it comes to the next step in the process. And if I was telling you ideal advice, I would say, now this is a time where you do another read through and you make sure all your stuff is perfect. Or this is a time where you
check your pacing. So for pacing, there's like a Excel spreadsheet for Save the Cat that'll kind of give you an idea of your pacing. I'll link that below. And I would be like, okay, now go back and like trim chapters or add to chapters to make sure your pacing is perfectly aligned. But this is like the difference. I'm not gonna tell you to do stuff that I know I myself won't do. This is my revision process. I'm always like, you should read it through one last time. You should really check your pacing. But for me, the very first revision of like a first draft, to get it to a polished state, to show it to beta readers and CPs, like I'm just not going to. I can't be bothered with it. Those aren't the sorts of things that I'm asking beta readers anyway. I'm not asking them to get into the nitty-gritty. I'm asking them for overarching information. And so that's why like I honestly don't really bother with the final read through, and I don't bother with the pacing check, because I want to see what real readers think of it. And on that note, the next step, this final step, is that I go through and I make sure that I know what I want to ask beta readers. So I watched Lindsay Puckett's video. I'm going to post it here and also in the description, about her super detailed beta reader process. And essentially, long story short, she uses Google Forms to solicit like very specific questions about the manuscript, so you get exactly the feedback you want. And that is what is part of my new revision process now, is that I need to go through my manuscript and I need to make sure that in that Google form I have all the questions that I need. So all the questions about characters, etc. Lindsay's video is extremely like proficient. It will let you know all the things you need to know about that. But essentially that's the like next and final step for my revision process, is making sure I have all that in place, so that I can send it to beta readers or CPs. If you don't have any beta readers or CPs lined up, then that is a step you need to add in between. I have a list of people, like whenever people say, oh, I would love to beta read for you, I take note of that shit. I don't forget. I remember. And I'll cycle back to those people and I'll be like, hey, remember when you said you wanted to read for me? Do you still want to do that? For this book, I do have trigger warnings. And so I let them know the trigger warnings, in case that's like a decision in which they wouldn't want to read because of that content. And if they agree to it, then I have those beta readers. There's lots of videos about places you can find beta readers. I won't go into depth about it in this video, but that's kind of the final step of this first revision process after a first draft. To get to this first polished version, is then I finish at that beta reader section, and now I'm going to send it off to them when I'm done. I'm not done right now, but when I'm done, I'm going to send it off to them. And thank you so much for watching this video about my new revision process. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. What sort of things do you do when you revise your very first draft? Please comment and share them, and we can all learn from each other. And thank you so much for watching this video. Did I already say? Yeah, thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe. I post every Tuesday and Friday. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.